Hello again, and thank you for staying with us. We continue here. The African National Congress Youth League has urged the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition to withdraw its proposals to amend the National Credit Act, calling on government to rather pursue policies that expand access, write off historic student debt, and also ensure financial inclusion. The League calls the proposals anti-poor and anti-youth, and also argues that it would make the chance of falling into the debt trap for young people more likely, particularly for those from the working class and black communities. For more on this, we're joined by ANC Youth League spokesperson Zama Khanyasa. Zama, good to have you on the program this evening. So the ANC Youth League describes the proposal to list student debt with credit bureaus as anti-poor and anti-youth, as mentioned. Can you unpack exactly how this policy would harm young people in practical terms?
Good evening, and thank you for having us. Well, as the ANC Youth League, as we've said, that we view this, of course, as being anti-youth, because young people who come from different backgrounds fight so hard to access higher education. And it is our government that has given them the hope that despite their backgrounds, they should pursue education. And due to a number of reasons, sometimes because of lack of enough funding for them, they end up being able to register in institutions of learning and studying, but unable to pay their fees. So it is so disappointing that it can happen that when they've fought so hard, they found a way to get into the institutions of higher learning, then in the end, they are blacklisted for trying to fight for their right to education and trying to change their situation. So we view this as regressive because imagine you are blacklisted before you can even enter the job environment, before you can be able to start a business and say you are going to look for funding. If you are already blacklisted, it means that you are not going to be able to get that funding to start a business. So there are many things that we view are going to really take young people back if this is implemented. But we are so glad because the conversation is now open, and we do have the ears of the department, and they have been, there's a statement that they've released as well, but we are not going to rest and relax because we want to make sure that even though it was unfortunate that in the first place, we're not against discussions to amend the Credit Act. What we are saying is that you cannot then say also you are going to include students. So in fact, what we are now looking forward to is them stating in their documentation that actually student debt will be exempted from being counted as one of those debts that must lead to being blacklisted and whatnot. And we're looking forward to government actually giving us plans that how are they going to assist students who owe or who have historical debts, so that is actually addressed and they get their qualifications so that they're eligible to go out there and look for jobs and start their businesses and contribute actually to tax in South Africa so that they can assist in refunding other services and other students who will need funding to be able to go to these institutions of higher learning instead.
Zama, with that said, why does the Youth League then believe that this proposal contradicts the constitutional right to education and also the government's own youth development agenda?
Well, DCIC does not operate outside of government, or they don't have their own policies that they govern their own department with. Government has declared education as an apex priority. That then tells you, in any instance where there is a shortage, the government must come in and inject in their budgets of higher education or education in general, because that is what government has said. It's an apex priority. So it cannot be that when government is trying its level best to make sure that that is reflected in reality through how they've increased the budgets or the packages of NSFAS, even though we know that there are many needy students, and also the corruption that has been there at NSFAS and mismanagement of funds, which is an issue that needs to be addressed. But we're saying government is trying its level best to put or to rather have an impact in terms of expanding it. And we are looking forward to government implementing the 2017 resolution of free education. So it cannot be that we are waiting for those things to happen and then another department comes forward and says, in fact, because that those progressive resolutions have not been implemented, now let us punish the students, let us criminalize them by blacklisting them, by making them citizens, or not upstanding citizens when they have not even started their lives after studying.
Let's explore alternative views here. Some supporters of the proposal argue that it will improve financial discipline and accountability. How does the ANC Youth League then respond to this line of reasoning?
Financial discipline on what? When you have not even started to work, when you have fought your way to get to the institution of higher learning, possibly your parents borrowing even money from your neighbors to get the first taxi to access the higher education institution for the first time. So throughout the studying, there's been a struggle of what you are going to eat, of how you are going to make sure that you even finish that degree in the first place. Then in the end, it's said that you are going to be blacklisted. So how can you discipline someone for something that they have no power over? Because I would understand if the discussion says, how do we collect these debts when they are now hired? But when you say before the person is even hired, before you even know that they now have an income, you blacklist them. It means that their future is finished before it has even started.
You've raised the issue of deepening generational poverty, like you call it. How would this proposal then perpetuate or even worsen structural inequality in South Africa?
Well, it's what we have been saying, that a student who has parents who can afford to pay does pay. It is those students that are coming from disadvantaged backgrounds, that are coming from the missing middle. Because, we're so disappointed as the ANC Youth League that we have to now start this conversation again. The whole reason why there was a Fees Must Fall movement back in 2017 was because of these realities, lived realities in our societies, that even parents who are hired by government, some of them who are teachers, who are nurses, who are police officers, they cannot afford to pay the exorbitant funds or fees rather in institutions of higher learning. So we're saying now we're back here to this discussion again. We have to re-educate everyone. Why is it that some students are unable to afford to pay their fees? So really, we do feel that instead, let us redirect the conversation to important discussions of how do we address the issues of historical debts, and also acknowledge the fact that actually institutions of higher learning have reserves. There is no institution of higher learning that is not going to function because certain students have not paid their fees. But that's not to say that it must not be addressed. There are opportunities here. There are sitters, there are private sectors who benefit from graduates who come from these institutions of higher learning, who must also play their role, who must also contribute towards higher education, so that it becomes a responsibility of everyone. Because if you invest in education, we are actually investing in the development of the country.
Zama, as we wind down our conversation, what steps has the ANC Youth League taken or will take to mobilize the youth or even civil society around this issue? Are mass actions or legal challenges on the table here?
Well, that is a discussion that is ongoing. Like I've stated, I think I've stated earlier on that we've started a conversation informally with key individuals within DTIC. We have also seen their statement that they've released, and we're saying that we're going to be following the discussion very closely. And because it's still just a proposal, we're actually in a process of lobbying them that one, it must be withdrawn fully, but two, they must rather put it out there and state it clearly that actually debts that come from students, or rather student debts, must be exempted from being forwarded to companies, to credit bureaus, because some institutions have already started this. Some institutions have already started handing over student debts to creditors or credit collectors without this being implemented. And we're saying actually, even that needs to be addressed and it needs to be set aside.
A powerful conversation with the ANC Youth League's Zama Khanyasa on what's at stake for young South Africans in the fight for economic justice. Of course, the DTIC's proposal to list student debt with credit bureaus may seem like technical policy, but as we've heard from the Youth League, its real-world effects could be devastating for those who are already carrying the burden of inequality, whether in lecture halls, townships or job queues. The youth voices must not just be heard, they must also shape the future.